We're going to start with a bit of a story, a claim of propaganda in the magazine Forbes, which says that Russian media are using actors in their coverage of events in Ukraine.
That's right. Now, this is a gentleman who appeared on lots of different news broadcasts in Russia in the last week, Tom. His name is Andrei Petkov. It's Forbes.com who drew my attention to this. Let's take a look at some images or some screen grabs that they've prepared for us. This first one is on Russia 1. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. Russia Vesti, it's a state broadcaster. And he is posing here as an ordinary citizen who was attacked by ultra-nationalists or neo-Nazis. So thus far, thus credible, except when you scroll down and you see exactly the same gentleman, this time appearing on NTV National News. This time, Tom, he's a German spy, and he's confessing to the journalists that he is a German spy in rather a different tone, much more contrite this time. The first time out, he was a very angry person who had been attacked by neo-Nazis. Now he was a very contrite German spy because he'd been caught out. And further down again, let's take a look at this third screen grab, because this time it's on the National Independent News of Crimea, another channel. And here he is, a prominent paediatric surgeon who has returned to his home city to organise protests and has also saved many children's lives in the protests. These all three scenes were shot in the town of Nikolaev, which is in southern Ukraine. So they have that in common, but the gentleman in question was posing as three different individuals for three different networks. Suffice it to say that that would be a little bit of acting, Tom.
And very talented Mr. Ripley there. Perhaps he is a German spy after all, which explains the various guises.
Maybe one of those identities was a truthful one, and it was the only two that were fake. We'll never know. In any case, perhaps not the most trustworthy coverage of events on certain Russian networks.
Indeed. Now, the internet is a place where you go to for answers increasingly, encyclopedias, maps.
That's right.
Google Maps, what do they make of Crimea? Whose is it?
All right, well, they appear to be sitting on the fence on this one, Tom, or at least sitting on different fences depending on what country you're in, because what they've very shrewdly done is the border between Crimea and the rest of Ukraine. It really depends on what country you're in terms of how that border is penciled in. If you see here on the Russian version of Google Maps, it's very much an international border that they've drawn there across the north of Crimea, between Crimea and Ukraine. So Crimea is, for all intents and purposes, Russian for that image. Now, if I could just go back to the original, what you can see here, if you scroll down a little further, is that line here is dotted, right? It's not an international border for the rest of Google Maps internationally, except if you are logging on in Ukraine when the border disappears altogether and it's still, Crimea is still a part of Ukraine there. So that's very much Google saying, well, we're not going to make an executive decision on this. We're just going to allow people to access what they would like to see, depending on where they're accessing that particular zoom of Google Maps, Tom.
Confusing for geography students out there. Now to a Polish advertising campaign, which is drawing some parallels and making some references to that unrest in Ukraine.
That's right. It's been criticised, this one, Sobieski Polish vodka, a fine Polish vodka by all accounts. Here is an advertising campaign that's been getting attention on social media. Poland borders Ukraine. Guess Putin will do anything to get closer to a better vodka. Now, it is funny, but I think some people have pointed out that perhaps humour isn't the most appropriate tone. This is on Mediaite.com. Polish brand uses hilarious Ukraine conflict to sell vodka, and they are somewhat critical of that decision. Well, it is the news, and I suppose the news is often satirised, but perhaps the taste, depending on, it's not to the pleasure of everybody, Tom.
Well, it's advertising, isn't it? It's got us talking about a brand of Polish vodka we didn't know about.
Which was their intention.
And let's just end with a story that isn't related to Ukraine at all. Another case of possible French bashing in the United States media.
That's right. This is BuzzFeed.com, an article that went online on the 9th of April. And what you have here is, how French are you? Right now, it's a questionnaire, Tom, which certainly paints the French in a stereotypical way. You've gone on strike at least once in your life. If you can click on that, then you're certainly quite French, according to this questionnaire. If you've skipped a queue and then criticised another person for skipping the same queue, you're also quite French. What else do we have? You've tasted raw oysters. You don't like rich people, etc., etc. Now, it is meant in good humour, but for the journalists over at Les Inrecuptibles, which I always have trouble pronouncing, they think it's just the latest example in a series of articles, whether they be satirical or otherwise, in the American media that are simply French bashing. So they're not too impressed.
Turn the page there after Hollande visited and he was given that great fanfare and glittering reception. I thought we'd moved on from that.
I think largely speaking we have.
All right. Thank you very much
Thanks,
indeed,
Tom.
James Creedon. Thank you for Media Watch. It's time now for our focus segment. And